I am thrilled today to be joined by my friend, Gail Becker, who is the founder and CEO, former CEO of Caulipower Pizza. She stepped aside from that role once the company hit $100 million in valuation. She is an entrepreneur. She is a woman business leader. She is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. And she has one of the most fascinating stories, one of the most inspirational ones that you're going to find. So welcome, Gail Becker.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for such a nice intro. It's certainly great to be with an old dear friend.
So we were in Hamburg, Germany at a bar, and we were talking, we had escaped from an Edelman corporate meeting with some of the other troubled employees.
It's fuzzy, but it's coming back to me.
You were an unlikely suspect, I will say, to be out. You would normally have been up front, leading, doing things, but we got you out. You cut the meeting, and we were at a bar, and you were telling me about your kids. They had celiac disease, and you were talking about healthy eating, which is hard in Germany. And there were no vegetables. And we talked about cauliflower, and I said, that's my least favorite vegetable. And you said, I make pizza.
Did I?
With cauliflower crust. And I was like, there's no such thing, Gail. And you were like, no, there is. And it's probably why you never asked me to be on the board or anything. But you have taken an idea that was really a necessity as a mom. You're a business executive, a business leader running Edelman's Los Angeles operations, West Coast operations, one of the very senior executives in the company. You're going home, you're making pizza dough, you're doing this, and you turn it into a $100 million business. How does that happen?
Well, it sounds kind of crazy when you say it all like that. But it was really an interesting moment in time, really. Three things had sort of converged in my life. One was, we did work in corporate America together. And that day at that Hamburg bar and days like it were certainly wonderful. But the longer I spent in corporate America, the more I realized I need something else. I want to do something more meaningful. I want to help people. But I didn't quite know what that was. Around the same time, my father passed away. My father, as you noted, was a Holocaust survivor. Actually, both my parents were. I'm a first-generation American. And when he died, something inside me sort of just snapped. And I realized I needed to honor him in some way. He was an entrepreneur. He came here with nothing. He built a small business, the American dream. And I knew I just had to change my life and honor him. And then around the same time, I am the mom of two boys with celiac disease. I was always looking for ways to sort of put more nutrients into their diet. I was very disheartened by what I saw in the frozen food aisle. And I made cauliflower crust pizza. One time I found a recipe on the internet. There were about 500,000 on at the time. And it was okay. And my son asked me to make it again. And I said, no, it took 90 minutes when I got home from a full day of work, as you said. But I looked for it everywhere. I couldn't find it. I put all of those three things together. My disenchantment with corporate life, this desire to honor my entrepreneurial father, and the realization that, you know what? People deserve better food and they shouldn't have to be relegated to spend 90 minutes to make it. And I put all those in a blender and I came out with, I know I'm going to leave my job and start a company called Caulipower. And that's what I did in May of 2016.
And so there's so many threads there I want to pick up and I want to talk about, but let's start with your disenchantment.
Okay.
You are a senior executive. You have climbed as high in this company as you can go or would want to go. You know, when I was there, I tried to evade promotions, right? You know, that was,
you were much smarter than I was.
But you are mid-career, you know, almost, am I allowed to say when you start this?
I was up there.
I mean, you're in your 40s.
Sure. Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you start something new, but talk about what's missing. Because you have everything you're supposed to have, right? That they tell you.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so beautifully said, Steve. You're exactly right. I think maybe even particularly for women, you know, if you do all of this and you work super hard and you manage your kids and you do all that, you're living the dream. And you're getting promoted and they're paying you a good salary. What more could you possibly want out of life? And I was really heading down that track until I realized I did want something more out of life. And I think losing someone close to you makes you recognize the fragility of life. And you either better be doing something you love or have one hell of a time trying, because boy, who knows what's going to be here tomorrow. And for me, it was the passing of my father. For a lot of your listeners, it could be the pandemic. Didn't that also make us realize the fragility of life? And I just knew I wanted something different. I had never taken a bet on myself. I had always relied on, you know, someone else to put my, you know, to give me a paycheck or promote me, to your point. I just, something inside me, I can only describe it as a calling, just said, this is something I need to do, because I didn't want to know what would have happened if I didn't do it. And the day I left our former place of work is the day that I wrote a blog called "It's Better to Say Oops Than What If."
Better to say oops
than what if.
What if? Tell me about your father.
So my dad, he was liberated from Auschwitz. He was there for 4 years. He came to America with nothing, less than nothing, no family, no money, no language, no help. And he was drafted to fight in the Korean War shortly after he got here, which is something a lot of people don't know. They used to draft the survivors. The boat after the Korean War left him off in San Francisco. And that's where he built his small business. That's where he bought a tiny little house in 1970 for about $62,000. A little pink house. And it was that little pink house that I sold to put everything literally I had into Caulipower.
We're going to talk about that little pink house in a minute, but tell me more about your father. He's born in what country?
He was born in Germany. And all his family was killed during the war, with the exception of his brother, who was in the camp with him. And you know, when he was liberated, he used to he was what was known as a summer commando, and those are the Jews who were forced into labor by the Nazis. So in my dad's case, he pulled the gold teeth out of the remains before they put them in the oven. And he did that for about 4 years. And he did that because when he got off the train, the Nazi said, "What does your father do?" And my dad said, "I'm a dentist." And he handed him a pair of pliers and said, "Okay, you're going to pull the gold teeth." And that's what he did. And he, you know, he was a remarkable man. And I just loved this country. Every single day of my life, he would say the following to me. He would say, "God bless America." He'd say, Gail, do you have any idea how lucky you are to be born in this country? And, you know, it's interesting. You use the word threads before, Steve, and there are so many threads from my childhood, from being the child of two survivors, from being his child, that I could put together now and say, oh my goodness, of course, this is what I ended up doing with my life. You know, my father he built a small salvage business. He used to buy dented cans of food and other things and sell them to hotels and restaurants around San Francisco. I would go with him on these sales calls. I had no idea I was going on sales calls at the time, like, you know, 6, 7 years old. I used to ring the cash register at my dad's store starting at 5 years old. And I really got such a good sense of business, of knowing people, of building relationships, and how that is really the cornerstone of business. And you know, and I think, you know, that's why when he died, you know, he always said to me, why would you want to work for somebody else? Never understood it. He never understood it. I used to say, as we all do, oh, Dad, never understanding what he was trying to tell me. And when he passed away, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I said, oh, now I get it. And that's why I turned my life upside down to honor him.
Tell me about your mom.
My mom was also born in Germany. She was in the kinder transport. So they basically put her on a train and to go live with a Catholic family in England. Never saw her mother or brother again, but her father did make it out. He went to London to get her. They lived there for a little while, and then they both came to America on the Queen Mary. And my grandfather, who's obviously the only grandparent I ever met, he had a small dairy farm in Orange County, California, which way back then used to be all farm. And so, you know, sometimes I sort of halfway joke and say I grew up on a farm. In many ways I did, because we each had our own pet cow. I used to have to milk it and take care of it. And, you know, so I've always, I think I'm probably the only person in the world who loves the smell of cows, but there was something, you know, that sort of farming, the importance of food, which I think, which was a theme from both of my parents, because they went for hungries for so long. Food was always the utmost important in growing up. And so there were so many telltale signs that led me to this moment in my life.
Brothers and sisters?
2 sisters. Unfortunately, one passed away from COVID.
Very sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you.
When you think about your life, it's improbability
yes.
that your father and your mother survived.
Mm-hmm.
They survived a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it to the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think about that a lot, actually, Steve. I can hear the weight of it in your words. I feel the weight of it on my shoulders. And I think that's why I thought, gosh, I better not waste it.
Your father works his entire life.
Hmm?
He's not a rich man.
Nope.
He's a working class American. He owns a business.
Mm-hmm.
He survived combat.
Mm-hmm.
He survived Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
He raises a family, and he leaves something behind to you.
Yeah.
And he gives you in an inheritance that small pink house.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
You know, against the advice of just about everyone I know, I sold it, and I put every last dime into Caulipower. I wish I could say why I did it. Now, lots of people come up to me and say, oh my goodness, that was so smart. Sure, looking back, it probably was pretty smart. But at the time, it was probably the stupidest thing I could have done. Let's take really, the only money I'm ever going to inherit, and which wasn't a huge amount but enough, and put it into a business that I knew nothing, into an industry that I knew nothing about. Smart.
Talk about what it's like emotionally for you to be all in. All in.
Yeah.
I call this the Cortez strategy. This is when you burn the boats on the beach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no way back.
Yeah.
Only forward. You will either succeed.
Yeah.
Or you will fail.
Yeah. It's interesting. Two things. One is in the beginning, so I worked on Caulipower for about a year before I told anyone what it was and before I launched in market. And I remember thinking back to that year, like, boy, that was great, right? I had no one to disappoint. It could have failed 100 times during that first year of building the company, and no one would have known. And it was sort of great. And no one was relying on me. I didn't have any employees. And it was great. It was just me. The bigger I got, the more people I relied on me, the more mouths I had to feed. As I grew and got investors and all of these different stakeholders in the business, the weight of it is sometimes, strangulating. It is, because it is, particularly during the pandemic, which exacerbated everything. It is all that I thought about morning, noon, and night. I would wake up, first thing thinking about it. I'd go to bed, last thing thinking about it. I would fight for that business like it was my third child. I don't have 2 children. I have 3 children, Caulipower being the third. And let me tell you, by far the most challenging of the 3, by far. But what I will say to your question, which is a very, very good one, what I've decided to do in order to sort of make it through that weight, that all-inness, is I decided to change my definition of success. So, and to change so what I mean by that is, some people define success, I got a huge valuation, or I was able to raise X millions of dollars, or I was able to sell the company for Y, or whatever it is. That's not success to me. What is success to me is something I've already done. I made that very first step. I cashed in everything I had, and I bet on myself. And I am an entrepreneur. Now, I don't know what the future is going to hold. I hope it's good, but who the heck knows? We're certainly well on our way. But shouldn't that be people's definition of success? Why does success always have to be monetary? Why can't it be your willingness to try, your willingness to challenge yourself, to learn something new, to bet on yourself, to see what the world has to offer? That's a far better, and I would say richer, definition of success.
You just said something that struck me, and it was the passion that you said it declaratively. You declared, and you sure fucking are, right? You said, right? I mean, there's no doubt, right? You said, I am an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
When I met you, you were not.
That's true.
You were not an entrepreneur in your 20s, nor your 30s,
right,
nor your 40s,
right.
But you are in your 50s, and you've built a really big company. How many people work for Caulipower?
Well, not including obviously our manufacturing, because those are co-manufacturers and we don't include, so it's not the people that work on the floor making our pizzas, although there are hundreds and hundreds of do that, but just in sort of corporate headquarter land, it's over 50.
What have you learned about leadership in running a company that you didn't know as an executive in a big company who was, fundamentally a consultant, right? You were advising big companies, some of the biggest in the world, on their crises, on their strategies, on their marketing, on their brand, on 100 different public-facing activities.
I learned a couple things, and I would say even I think, the pandemic even helped sort of drive some of this home. Well, the first thing I would say, just in terms of your consultant reference, which is a good one, because you're absolutely right. The interesting thing about being a consultant is that, and you know this better than anyone, sometimes people listen to you and sometimes they don't. And guess what you get to do when you start your own business? You get to listen to yourself. You get to listen to all that advice that no one else bothered to take. That's liberating. That's amazing. And that's really been an eye-opening part of this business. But the other key part to leadership is listening. And when you start a business that you know nothing, in an industry that you know nothing about, what do you have to do? You have to hire people smarter than you, who know the business, who've been in it. So what did I do the very first day that I decided to start a business called Caulipower? I hired consultants, because I needed them to teach me about the industry. And what is so interesting, I think, particularly about being a slightly older entrepreneur, is that you have the courage and the confidence to ask a lot of questions, to say you don't know something, to listen to other people. Doesn't mean you need to always follow their advice, but you need to listen.
I was going to say, do you think being over 50 is a huge differentiator, in that you're at a place in life, if you look back like at yourself at 35, 40, when you're dealing with the bankers, when you're dealing with the lawyers, when you're dealing with all of the things that come with a company that becomes a 9-figure company that's worth over $100 million, the capacity to look at it with some life experience and say, I'm not doing that. Get out of here. You're not going to take from me what I built. And how have you navigated that as you've gone through this? I mean, again, right, as you said, right, you truly, and I have a question, right, that's coming up, right, which is just the operations of it, the mechanics, right? Like how do you do it? How do you go setting about to do this? But you have no kind of core competency in the space. You are not from a banking background. You're from a PR and marketing background, and you start it, you build it, you navigate it, and you don't lose it along the way, including during the biggest supply source disruption, right, in modern world history, which occurs during pandemic. What is it that you're relying on? Is it a little bit of wisdom? Is it channeling your dad? Is it a native grit? What is it that's fueling you, right, into a space where you know nothing about it?
Wow, such a good question. I would say it's a couple things. First off, look, there are lots of people who come from, very popular business schools, very famous business schools, and they graduate with a business plan and they say, okay, I'm going to graduate. Here's my business plan. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to make X amount of money. Then I'm going to sell it. Then I'm going to do this. And that's a great way to start the business. I got nothing against that. But that's not my way, because I never started the business for that reason. I started the business, and this I think is key, and maybe it is associated with being a slightly older entrepreneur. Maybe it is associated with being a female entrepreneur. I don't know, maybe a little bit of both. But the one thing I knew was, you know what? I had a pretty good gig in corporate life. I used to make a lot of money. I stayed at nice hotels. I had a good gig. Now I have the opposite of all that. Half as rich, twice as happy. That's what I always say. But what's the point? The point is, I left that to achieve something that was going to be more of a mission. I needed to listen to my mission. And for me, my mission was helping people. And that knowledge of the consumer, that empathy with the consumer, what I came to learn is nothing was more valuable than that. Why? Think about it like this. Companies like Nestle, but any huge, corporate conglomerate in the grocery store, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on R&D every year. Why did I, someone who had no experience in food, come up with the frozen cauliflower crust pizza? Because I knew what the consumer wanted. Of course, I did my research as well, though probably not enough. But I knew it. And I wanted to give it to them. And that is what drove me then. And that is what drives me today. And that is, yes, did I get hurt along the way because I didn't know investment banking and I didn't know private equity and I didn't know the investor world? I sure as hell did. I did. But do I get up every morning thinking about our consumers and the ways that I can help them? I do. Do I read every single piece of email, social media content, letter, phone call, every single thing that every consumer has ever written to us? I've read every last word. So both skills are really good. Having only one is going to hurt you by not having the other. But at the end of the day, is knowing banking and investment and private equity, is that going to make you a good company?
What is the number one lesson you learned when you talked about being bruised by the bankers, the lawyers through it? What is it? What would you tell to an aspiring entrepreneur or someone who's building a company and it's starting to succeed, it's starting to go, it's starting to grow?
I would probably say two things. I would say, one, hire a lot of lawyers. Lots of lawyers. And by the way, when I say lots of lawyers, I do mean lots of lawyers. Don't use one lawyer for everything. You need a lawyer who specializes in manufacturing, a lawyer who specializes in banking, a lawyer who specializes in investors, a lawyer who specializes in employment. Lots of specialty lawyers.
And one to keep an eye on all of them.
Exactly. Like, you can't overestimate the necessity of lawyers, unfortunately. But if you don't do that, you are definitely at a disadvantage. The other two things I will say is, one, never underestimate the amount of people, the ecosystem, who was out there waiting to prey on entrepreneurs, on founders, on people starting businesses. Full of them. lots of people who are there to help you. Boy, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am if I didn't meet so many people wanting to help the David versus the Goliath. And, you know, every day I'm so grateful for them, but also lots of people waiting to take advantage of you as well. And then finally, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to realize no one is going to care as much as you do. No one's going to work as hard. No one's going to care as much. And you know what? As soon as you make that realization, that's okay. That's okay. They're still going to work really hard. They're still going to care, but don't expect anyone to care as much as you do.
There's a profile in the Washington Post by, I think, a woman who has claim on being the best sports writer in America, Sally Jenkins. It's a profile on two of the great athletes of my younger days, Chris Everett and Martina Navratilova, and their rivalry and their friendship. And it is a brilliant piece of writing and journalism in this complex portrait of these two super athletes, super competitors, and this bond of friendship, of rivalry, of a lifetime relationship, 50 years, their struggles with cancer that they share vividly in this. And it is a beautiful, beautiful profile. One of the features of it that I found completely fascinating, and I think is a big difference between men and women, is that it remarks, and they are both of them grateful at the place in life that they both are, that their records are split, tied.
Wow.
Two of the greatest women tennis champions of all time, icons, women who were each other's chief rivals, have a split decision, an equal number of championships, and they're good with it.
Yeah.
And my theory is no guy is going to be good with that, or very few. And I'm going to use as my evidence of it, right, is the movie, right? I guess it's Rocky 3.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it ends, right, where Apollo Creed, Pearl Weathers, and Sylvester Stallone, Rocky Balboa, go into the boxing match after the championship fight to settle it, right? And you never know until later Rocky who won the fight, right? But men, right, as a general proposition, and I don't think this is a positive, right? I think it's a character flaw, right? Would be unsatisfied with that. When we look at an era where second generation of women in the workplace, at your age, CEOs, the generation of trailblazers that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Hillary Clinton was part of, the women who first entered the workplace. You have been around men for a long time, men in business, men executives. You are their peer now in every way, running a big company. What is the difference, without overgeneralizing, between male and female leadership? And what do businesses miss when they have an absence of female leadership in the company, not as a quota, but as an ingrained and fundamental aspect of the company's culture and value set?
Wow. How long do you have? There is a wonderful book. I just want to give a plug to Julia Burston from CNBC wrote a book, When Women Lead. She included a tiny paragraph on Caulipower, which is great, but just extraordinary women and the things that they do that are unique to women. And by the way, you obviously come from government. You could look at governments that were run by women during the pandemic, countries, states, and how they performed versus other places. And there's some commonalities there. And, you know, women are very comfortable, and this goes back to a little bit about what we were talking about before. Women are very comfortable listening to others, taking in that advice. They have nothing to prove, so they just want to do the best job. And usually it's a very sort of collaborative way of, you know, managing a business and sort of and listening to the experts around the table, making a decision, making a tough decision, making a fair decision, but taking in all of those inputs, which I think is really, really important. I think, you know, another thing that women do very well, that they really do have a sense of empathy. Now, you could look at empathy as being a soft element of business, but in actuality, it is a key element, because if you're not empathetic with the ultimate user of your product, your service, your business, then you don't have a business. If you can't put your mind into the body of who your customer is, what are you doing? So I think, and most importantly, women run businesses perform better. That's not me saying it. That's fact. You could, lots of Harvard Business Review, you name it, the ROI on female-run businesses is notably higher than on male-run businesses for many reasons, not the least of which are the several I mentioned. And yet, female entrepreneurs, I can't even say 3% anymore, get 3% of venture capital dollars. It's now, the pandemic, it's now just over 2%. So that's what I can't square. The businesses that we run have a better ROI, yet no one wants to give us money.
That's a shocking statistic. 3%.
Google it.
The venture capital of the venture capital.
Yes.
I wonder when you cut that, what the percentage is for minority women.
Even less.
Must be infinitesimally small.
100%, even less. It is criminal. Look, it's the same way. I mean, it's not, is it so surprising? Yes, it is so surprising, because you would think, oh, but the businesses perform better and I'm looking at the data, therefore I should give them money. Right. But it's the same way that you see why are we still not seeing enough female leadership at the top of companies? Because people promote people that you know. You hire people you know. You promote people you know. You give people a platform that have similar backgrounds to you. And it's like, just to use Caulipower as an example, very, very hard for people to wrap their head around. Well, I don't understand. Why would anyone want a pizza crust made from cauliflower?
It's delicious, by the way, too.
Thank you. It is delicious.
And I'm not a cauliflower guy, right? Like with the vegetable, but I have them. And you can always, like, it's great, right? Because there's always something healthy that you can pop in.
Yeah, but exactly. But it's like, unless, let's face it, most of those 569,000 recipes that people were making online were being made by women.
Right.
Was the unforeseen target right there. I mean, it was an idea hiding in plain sight, really. But yet It was so hard that very first time, so hard to raise money for Caulipower, so hard to raise money for all of these female entrepreneurs out there who have amazing businesses and amazing ideas and fantastic data and can't get the money. So I can't square that circle. I can give you lots of reasons why, but the more we talk about it, the better off we're going to be. And by the way, if Caulipower does anything but helps remind people, hey, maybe a female founded business is a good bet, I'm all for it. If it only does that, that is a huge success as far as I'm concerned.
Gail, I want to ask you about the movie poster behind you, A Journey with Purpose.
Yeah.
That is your father, who we talked about.
Yep.
And that's his grandson, your son.
Yes. Joshua, my son was 9 years old when we took him to Auschwitz with my dad. And that was the same age that my dad was when he went in.
Talk about, from a mother's eyes and a daughter's eyes, what that trip was like. What did your son learn about his grandfather there? What did he learn about life there?
Yeah. It's so funny, Steve, because I had a lot of people say to me, you're going to take your 9-year-old son to Auschwitz? Like I was supposed to take him on a Disney cruise instead. And I said, yeah, I am going to take him. It was so important for me, for my son to understand the responsibility that he has as a result of being my father's grandson. It's that passing of the torch. I wanted to put a fine moment on it. I wanted my dad to exhale, to say, I don't have to do this anymore because I have this young grandson who's going to, fight for fight for the people who don't have a voice, to fight ignorance and bigotry and hatred and anti-Semitism and so much of what we're seeing today. I mean, I think about my dad when I see the news every day because there's just more of it. And I think, he thought there was going to be less. And so I wanted my son to understand he has a responsibility in life, that it is up to him and me and my youngest as well to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, and to help fight for people who don't have a voice and causes that need our attention. And it's funny, my dad used to say, Gail, being in the camps, obviously the cold was awful. The pulling the gold teeth was excruciating. Waking up next to, cold bodies in the morning was horrifying. But the worst thing, he said, was the hunger. And I thought, I that never left me. I thought, if I can, through this business that he helped me build, if I can, help people, not, help feed people, help, we give a percentage of our sales to help build teaching gardens in underserved schools across the country, so that young kids really understand the power that comes from eating healthy foods and how that can feed their brains and continue them to do great things in life. That to me was like that was my connection. I don't know what it's going to be for my son, but I can tell you this, he knows it better be something.
When I listen to you talk there, it's not that I think that you mean that. I know that you mean every word of that because I know you. As an intellectual exercise, I'm going to push back on something.
Okay. Okay.
And I'd like you to respond to it.
Okay, please.
Because we live in an era where, as a practical matter, trust has collapsed in very nearly every institution you can think of.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, for example, is on his knees in China, pledging fealty to the Chinese Communist Party as we speak, literally yesterday. The lessons of Trump, to some degree, take as much as you can get. Empathy's for losers. Get yours. Get in line. Don't stand up. Shut up. Don't rise up. Don't do anything, right, other than take responsibility, obligations. These are suckers' creeds. Take. Because there's a lot of people who share that philosophy.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who share that philosophy. But those people are loud, which makes the numbers seem bigger than they are. Most people want to live their lives in peace and not fight every day and not take every day and give. I have seen so much of this. I know you've seen so much of this. Even in the pandemic, we saw so many people giving to people who were dying. So yes, those people exist. And there's nothing that I can do about that. There's nothing that my sons can do about that. But we can be responsible for putting more good out into the world, to leave it better than we found it, to help people, which is always more rewarding for the people who give than the people who get. And, you know, my parents taught me that. Think about the family in England who just took in a strange kid, my mother, and raised her. Think about all the people who helped my dad when he came to this country. He didn't have a penny. There was a bakery in New York. Becker means baker, by the way, in German. There was a bakery in New York where my dad used to sweep the floor in the morning and sleep on the floor at night. So yes, those people are always going to exist. But so does everybody else. And I haven't lost hope.
Was your father an optimist?
Yes, he was. That was the miraculous thing. I think when you've known tragedy in your life, and some of us do, you have two avenues. It can bring you down and you can live your life just mired in that tragedy, or you can use it as fuel. My father was the most optimistic man I have ever met. He woke up, God blessing America. He went to work and he just loved talking to people. He didn't talk to the people who were sitting at the table next to him in the restaurant. He went in the kitchen and he talked to the cooks and the chefs and the busboys and the people who work there, and because they were more like him. And he really was an optimist, Steve. And it's such an interesting question because I don't think I've ever thought of him in that way. But boy, when you said it, it was so obvious. Yeah. And he had every reason not to be, because he saw the worst in humanity. He lived the worst in humanity, but he believed the most in humanity. And, I think that's probably what he left me with. And I'm I'm so grateful.
What does it mean to be an American to you?
You know, I will say it does mean responsibility. I do feel responsibility to being an American. I do feel, I feel very fortunate. I feel like there's sort of, it's our responsibility to help others and help countries that are trying to achieve their freedom, that are trying to live democratic ideals. I do feel that is our responsibility. I saw what happened. I lived what happened through the voices of my parents when they didn't. You know, America was not known to be found during that time. It was England who saved my mother, not America. And so I think when I think of being American, I think of just like a really fortunate responsibility.
What's next for the company? Where is this company going?
What
is your vision ahead?
Well, we have a lot of new innovation coming out this year. A lot, probably our heaviest innovation year, which I'm very excited about. You're going to get a big box of it, Steve, at your home. I'm very excited.
Excellent.
And you know, we have a big vision, right? Today we make, you know, the #1 better for you frozen pizza in America. We have a lot of other products as well in different categories that are also doing great. And it is our goal to be the #1 better for you frozen food company in America. And we are well on our way.
Are you having fun?
Most days I'm having fun. It's not quite as fun as it used to be. It's not quite as fun as it used to be. It used to be so fun. Oh my goodness. You know, I think, but that's normal, right? Like the bigger a company gets, the less fun it gets, the more, the higher up you get in a company. You started off the conversation by talking about promotion. The more you get promoted, the less of the stuff that brought you into the company is the stuff you love to do, the less of it you like that you now get to do, right? That's just the way of life. So is it fun? Sure. Is it a privilege? Every single day.
All right. You have good news for us.
I do, because I adore you more than I can say. I would like to give all of your listeners a free Caulipower product, any product that they want. All they have to do is reach out to us on any of our social channels at Caulipower, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Mention a conversation with, and we'll send you a digital coupon good for any free product. So that's just
there you have it. That's awesome. A free Caulipower product. It's good stuff. If you haven't tried it, do. It's good for you. It's totally. So let me just say, you were the first person I ever had this conversation with, right? Kind of about like gut health.
Oh, wow.
Way back. And when you're conscious, you know, for me, you know, I just, you know, I'm almost completely off the gluten in the bread. And, you know, I think like a lot of people out there, you know, when you are, and you do, you just feel so much better. And I don't have any doubt whatsoever that, you know, in the next decade or so, that when the hammer comes down on the sugar industry and kind of all the science is totally in, they're going to find out that all the processed sugar, all that shit is as bad for you as nicotine and cigarettes and all the rest of it. But not Caulipower. So call and get that coupon.
I'm so glad you're feeling great. That's amazing.
Thanks, Gail.